very, very happy to be here today. You know why? Because really, for the last 2 weeks, I got this incredible cough. Go and see doctor, just wouldn't go away. Hey, this morning, miracle, I wake up, can talk already. So I'm so lucky, I thought today I'll do something more than the usual class. So what I'm going to do to increase your ROI is to give you a summary upfront. So that 2 things will happen. Number 1, once you know what we're going to do, you'll be motivated to want to learn more. Because you know what you're going to get upfront. Number 2, I'm going to pinpoint all those important areas. So that later if you do go back to your notes, you know where to look for it. Manage class is for 2 days. These 2 days, the first question is, what are we managing? Right? Class is called manage, but what are we managing? It's a very important topic. It's called employee grievances. And the Singapore government would want companies to have a platform, right, to hear grievances. Now what are grievances? Grievances are, another word for it, complaints, unhappiness. It can be real, it can be perceived. Therefore, we need to what? We need to investigate. We need to find out. As a complaint, there's unhappiness, you need to investigate. So therefore, it will be wrong, in fact very dangerous, to just learn about this topic alone. Because there's another one that is totally connected to it. In fact, they're conjoined twins, they're so close together. Right? What is that? It is employee discipline. Yeah. So if you found out that something went wrong here, then you need to take action. Employee disciplinary actions. So these two must go together, isn't it? Yes. And as now you can see, once actions are being taken, the person becomes what? Demoralized, a little bit unhappy, right? Then you give rise to what? Grievances, complaints again. So these 2 things are interconnected. So we're managing employee grievances and at the same time employee disciplinary actions. These are the tools that we need to think about. But it cannot be that simple, right? The next question we need to ask is, why are we doing this? Why are these 2 topics that are interconnected so important for us? The moment you have the reason of why we are doing certain things, then you'll be driven to do better. Okay. So it is to increase this word, productivity, isn't it? When the person falls into certain problems, he has some unhappiness, he complains, right? And you help this person remove that unhappiness, productivity goes up, right? But in the event when employees, for example, their performance are not up to mark, you want to take some actions, right? You want to do a little bit of counseling, and if it doesn't work, you want to take in some disciplinary actions. You may want to give some warning letter. You have a performance improvement plan, right? So that you want to drive productivity up. Right? But it cannot be sustainable if you do not have these. So it's rising productivity in a conducive, harmonious environment. Okay? When people make mistakes in the real world and they are found guilty by the law, they go to a place called prison. You won't call the prison the most conducive place on earth, right? But you do want, right? Most of them, except those very hardcore criminals, you do want them to recontribute back to society, right? Yes. So therefore, we want to make sure that this environment is both conducive and harmonious, so that productivity can be increased. So that's the reason why we are going to look at these 2 topics. Okay. And the final question you must then now have in your mind, how to do it. So in these 2 days, we will talk about employee grievances, which is a lot on procedures. What to do when employees have grievances. Like, what to do when your friends have a complaint. Do you drag on it or do you address it immediately? We want to have early intervention, right? So we'll talk about it. We have early interventions. And when we talk about early interventions, another word for it is what we call informal actions. And informal actions, there are a lot of trust that is needed. So we're going to talk about all these things. When we talk about employee discipline, we're going to talk about a lot of rules, right? Because the companies have rules, your household, they have rules, between friends, we have certain things that we abide by. Yeah? And you say, Paul, you and me, right? Or brothers. And there are certain things we'll do, there are certain things we will not do. Okay? So what are these rules? And when we implement these rules, we have to be fair, isn't it? So we're talking about fairness. We're talking about this term called natural justice. And if the person is not happy with the discipline that's being melted up on him or her, then we're talking about what is the appeal procedures. And when we implement both the employee discipline and we hear the grievances, we're talking about how do we make it very consistent, isn't it? It cannot be, Paul, you and me is one standard, then, right, Radhika, you and me have a different standard. We can't. We need to have consistency in implement all this. But ladies and gentlemen, make no doubts about this. This is what the class will cover. But based on my experience of more than 550 clients and thousands of learners, the more you get well and very comfortable with all these principles and terms and procedures and rules, the more robotic you become. The more shallow you become. The more surface it seems to be. Because you'll be following rules, you'll be following the steps. So therefore, the last question, which is the how, needs to really look at what really connects these 2 very important topics. And at the core of all these, ladies and gentlemen, is people. So back to the first question, what are we managing? Like what my colleague Serena had mentioned in the introduction, is we're managing people is about people centricity. Focusing on people. And these are not ordinary people. There are three kinds of people. The government, represented in Singapore by the Ministry of Manpower, MOM. You would have this labor, or otherwise known as employees, represented by NTUC in Singapore. And you definitely would have the third party, the employer, or otherwise known as management, represented by my previous organization, the Singapore National Employees Federation. So these are the three kinds of people we are talking about that we're trying to manage within these two topics. Then, finally, you're still going to ask me this question: how can we manage all these? How can we manage people? That is why these two topics will be just covered in one day, and trust me, that's more than enough. Two topics, not just one in one day, but these two topics, very big, heavy topics, in one day. And then for day two, in order to be able to manage people's centricity, we're going to really focus, and this is really where it matters all. We're going to look into motivational theories. And not just understand each of those theories. I'll introduce you more than 10 of those major theories. But importantly, for us to be able to integrate these theories, put them in a framework, and apply them in more than 50 real-life cases that I have ready for you to partake, for us to discuss intensively over these 2 days. So that's what we're going to do. Okay? Imagine once you're able to do this in a framework format to address employee grievances and employee disciplinary issues. Do you know what you can do? Do you know when people have grievances, what do they have? They have a lot of happiness, right? They have what we call suffering, right? Yes, Esther? Yes. Initially, it starts off, could be a small little thing, but if it's not resolved, every time you think about this suffering, it intensifies. Imagine you are able to help people remove suffering. Imagine you can bring people who have made mistakes, and none of us here are saints, right? When they fall afoul of the rules, that they will be able to increase their productivity again in their whole life. You're able to bring these, not just to people around you, but also fundamentally for yourself. So I look forward to these 2 days before. Okay, 可以听啊，哎呀，很热这个节目。哎 ，now I'm going to make it more conducive for us all. keep it. 哎，Sharon，还没有 video 没有听啊？喂，快点听啊！哎，不要拍啊！喂。